Hello. Today we are doing the first ever video recorded episode of Perspective Shifting. So this does feel like a bit of a shift for me because I've got to shift my focus to the lens. Usually I'm just like hunched back over the mic, like no one can see me in my own little portal. So working with a new realm today. So if you're watching on YouTube, hi. If you're new here, so happy to have you here, so happy to spend some time with you, very honoured. Today we're going to be talking about how to listen to your intuition, how to use your intuition, what intuition is. Intuition is your sixth sense, just like how you have taste, sight, smell, hearing, all of those kind of things. Intuition is a sense. It is a literal thing. A lot of people think intuition is kind of like this not real thing, but it is. It's an actual sense. It functions just as well as your sight, and living an intuitively led life is an absolute game changer. I live my life centered from my intuition. I make all of my decisions from my intuition. Guaranteed, it doesn't always run the show. I have fear, I have ego, I have other parts of me, and we need all of those parts. But I really want to encourage anyone who is listening to listen to their intuition and to use it. We can often, we listen to our intuition when we're in situations of danger. You know, when you're in a room with someone and something's happened and you just get that gut feeling, something is just not right. That's your intuition. People can feel them in different parts of the body. You can feel it in your stomach. Some women feel it in their vulva yoni area. Some people feel it in their head, their heart. So even as you're kind of consuming this now, thinking like, when you've connected to your intuition before, is it a gut feeling? Where do you feel it in your body and how does it feel? Before we dive into the topic, we're just going to do a little check-in. So maybe giving your shoulders a little roll, closing your eyes, maybe actually a stretch. I always need one. Slowing your breath down and just bringing your awareness in your body. Actually, today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to bring a hand to our forehead and a hand to the back of our head. And we're just going to hold and just bring kind of like a calming, soft energy to the headspace. Our brains are always just whirring and whirring, over 8,000 thoughts a day. So slowing your breath down and just bringing some kind of energy through your hands into the head, whatever you feel like your headspace needs. Maybe that's safety, peace, clarity. Now bringing your hands to your heart space and just keeping that breath nice and slow, bringing that awareness inwards and just noticing how your heart space is. Does it feel open? Does it feel closed? Anything that you're needing? Just taking a moment to be present with yourself. Removing any judgment of what is coming up and just being with me in this moment. Okay, let's get this show on the road. So, intuition. I was like, oh, shall I make notes for this? I could write a book on how to listen to your intuition, and then I just got the intuitive hit that I should just roll with it. I've been doing that a lot recently with my podcast episodes. I've just been like, should I make notes? And then I'm like, no, just gonna go roll with it. That's a form of intuition. What would make sense is to make, some notes, some bullet points. If I lose trail of my thought, I've got my bullet points to refer back to. But what makes sense intuitively is, to listen to your intuition. And that's one kind of tip I'd say, is that your intuition is always gonna make you do things that don't make sense. It's gonna be like, go to that country, and you're gonna be like, well, I don't really have any money, or it's not a very good time. Your intuition is very different to your logical brain. Your logical brain is like, oh, we're gonna go on a walk. We should take a map. We should go here, we should take this, this, and this. It wants to plan everything. It's very ego-based. And what the ego loves is predictability and familiarity. So the ego is always creating what it knows. Whereas the intuition is always going to be, you know, if you're thinking about your higher self, it's always going to be leading you to the place you don't know, leading you into the uncomfortable, leading you into a reality that's going to be more in servants and incongruence with your soul. Whereas that logical part is like, okay, this system worked before, so let's repeat this system and use it again. So there's already a way that you can define this. I have a story about this that really reminds me of this. So I was working on like a Spanish island a few years ago, back in 2021. I was doing like a live-in nanny job and I had the weekends off. And my first weekend off, I spent all week researching in my time off, looking at the best beaches to go. I was in Mallorca looking at the best beaches, secret spots. I went to rent a moped. I went like 3 days before. I filled in the paperwork. I was so organized. I had spent hours upon hours meticulously planning this day, making sure that I could have the best possible experience and the best day ever. Anyway, this day ends up being like the most crazy day of my life. I genuinely thought I was gonna die. I showed up to the moped shop. They didn't have the scooter they promised me, so they ended up giving me one that was 3 times the power. So this was like meant to be, I was meant to have like a 125 and this ended up being like a 350. And I'd only just learned to drive. I think I'd been like a moped driver for 3 months in England, where we drive on the other side of the road, and they just give me this like massive beastie bike. I could barely lift it. It was, I was literally like, whoa. They give me this beastie bike and I'm literally driving around in a crop top, short shorts in the Spanish mountains. I remember the whole time I had my music blaring in my ears and I was like, I'm probably going to die today, but this is kind of fun. It's kind of thrilling, but it's also kind of terrifying. Anyway, I tried to find these beaches. I kept getting lost. I tried to take myself out to like this really nice coffee shop. I'm obsessed with really nice coffee shops and I'll always Google them when I go away, like the best ones in town. And then that didn't go to plan. I went here, that didn't go to plan. Then I went to go to this beach that's meant to be one of the most beautiful beaches in Mallorca. And I get there, the road is like this rocky, sandy road. There's all these people, there's goats. I'm literally in the desert. And I start riding the bike. Everyone's like, turn back, you can't go this way. There's like problems with the parking. And I'm on the road on this fucking massive, powerful bike, and the horsepower is, oh my god, and I'm literally like bumping over these rocks like I'm gonna fall, like there's holes in the road, and there's this like French couple next to me on a Harley Davidson, and I'm literally like and then I arrive there and you have to crawl through a hole in a barbed wire fence, and then it's a 2-hour hike down to this beach, which was not included in the description. And it was like sweltering heat, like mountainous lands, deserts. I was by myself. I think someone had to help me climb over a wall at one point. This day, I literally got back home and I couldn't believe I was in one piece. And I was just gutted because I'd put so much preparation and energy into this day and I wanted it to be this perfect day. And it was just like, I just got home and I was like, I actually can't believe I'm alive. I just was grateful to be alive. So anyway, the next weekend comes along. I've learnt my lesson. I'm not planning anything. I'm going with the fucking flow. I'm not fucking... So anyway, I show up at the bike shop. I think I went to a different one or the same one. Bike comes through, the right size bike. And I pull up the map of the island of Mallorca and I just let my intuition guide me. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go up there. I get on my bike, go up to that place. I don't know what's there. I find these beautiful beaches and a beautiful mountain walk. There's like no people, which I love. I'm not a big lover of like busy tourist destinations like my dream places abroad are just no people. And I go on this like beautiful hike, the sea's so blue, like the mountain, like the landscape's gorgeous, and like I'm feeling really good. And yeah, I just go on this hike, and then I go back on the map and I put my finger again on another place I want to go. I find like this little supermarket, get all these snacks, find these like perfect little things, and then I go on another hike and I end up a nudist beach. Great, because I love a nudist beach, absolutely love that. And I hike down, and on the way there's like an arts, it's like in the middle of nowhere. It's literally in the middle of nowhere. And there's like an arts and culture museum. I am like an absolute geek when it comes to traveling abroad. Like I love to go to a museum. I want to learn the history. I want to see the artwork. I want to know the story of the people, of the land. Like I just love that. And there was this like perfect little art gallery in the middle of nowhere. And then there was this little church. And I like went into the church and was just really connecting to like the energy, the spiritual energy of the place. I took like this beautiful hike down to the beach. There were all these gorgeous rocks, and the landscape was so unusual, and it was just like the most perfect day. And I couldn't believe it. Like it was like one of like the best days I've had, because I just listened to my intuition. You know, I didn't do the logical planning. I didn't do the research. I didn't do the right thing. I just listened to my soul, and my soul took me. My soul could look at a map and go, this will be your favorite place in Mallorca. This place is going to have art. It's going to have museums. It's going to have nudist beaches. It's going to have nature hikes. All the things I love. And yeah, that is just a little story of the difference between listening to your logic and listening to your intuition. And I always talk about this when I have kind of like debates around intuition. Me and my ex used to have a lot of debates on this topic of like, back in the day, before Google Maps, before having a sat-nav in your car, before even having a car, women would use their intuition. You know, we traveled as communities. We, you know, traveled with settlers, like, and you would use your intuition. And I had this before when I did my Duke of Edinburgh. This was before I even knew I was spiritual. I was just some insecure teenage girl with braces. And this honestly is the most wild story. If you don't know what the Duke of Edinburgh is, it's like this thing that you do in the UK at school where you like go on a hike and you go camping and you have to like do all these activities and you get like a little award, and you do your bronze, silver and gold, and this was a bronze. And anyway, we were all on this hike, my group, it was like me and 3 other girls, and we got lost and we were following the map, but the map we had, it was like an old paper map, and the route on the map was expired. It had all overgrown. And I was like never confident at map reading. Like I was not confident at like hiking, activity sport, nothing. Like I just thought I was such a loser when I was a teenager. And we were lost for hours. We weren't getting anywhere. I grabbed the map and I'm like, okay, I don't know what happened. Something just took over me. I was like, okay, we're going down here. We like crossed the road. And then I'm like, right, down this woods. We go down the woods. And I'm like, right, everyone, we got to jump over that river. Everyone was like, what? I was like, yeah, we've got to jump over this river. Everyone's like, okay. So we all have these like giant backpacks with like tents, sleeping bags, cooking stuff. It's like teenage girls. So we all jump over the river, and then there's like this thing of trees, and like it's all trees, and I'm like, we've got to crawl under those trees and we've got to like get up there. And they're like, what the hell? I just get on my hands and knees and we're like crawling on the floor, crawling under these trees, like the tree branches like scrabbling our bags. And then we get to this tiny little path. We're all like that, like this tiny little back path. It's like covered in litter. And I'm like, right, we're gonna go right round this corner. We could like scuffle out, go around the corner, and then we end up on the road, and we ended up like exactly where we needed to be. And it was just, I just couldn't believe it. We all were like, oh my God, we found our way back to the path. And it's just so incredible, like how your intuition just knows. Like I always find that my intuition, when I'm going somewhere new, it's always better for me to just like follow my knowing. Like I will know, like one time when I was working in Spain and we were in Madrid, we got lost and we just like kept trying to find the hotel. We kept going the wrong way and we kept trying to find the map and it didn't work. And it was like me and these two guys. And then I was like, it's down here, it's down there. Okay, I think it's here and we're here. And they were like, how did you know that? And I was like, I don't know. I just listened. And that's one thing I'd say about intuition, is that the world that we live in is so busy. You know, we're always on our phones. We've always got something in our ears. We're always covered in distractions and noise and chaos. And that doesn't give us a lot of time to listen. So I'd say if you want to start creating a relationship with your intuition, start to listen and start to have space to listen. Since I've been living this chapter in my life where I have so much space, I can listen a lot more, and you're going to have voices of fear and ego, and you're going to have, you know, all of these other voices in your mind. You can't get rid of those. You know, having and being intuitive isn't about being in this blissful, peaceful, tapped in state all the time. It's just learning to discern what part of you is leading. You know, you've got your ego, you've got your inner critic, you've got your inner child, and then you've got your soul, your intuition, your inner knowing. And it's just learning, when you're trying to make decisions, which part of you is trying to make that decision. The inner child will probably be trying to make a decision out of comfort and familiarity. That will come from fear, and so will the ego. The ego will always be making decisions from fear. Like, you know, you're feeling a bit weird and your ego will be like, text that person, text that. The ego has a sense of urgency, a sense of panic, a sense of, I need to get something. I feel insecure and I need to do something to make myself feel better. So I would say your intuition isn't really going to make you make decisions from fear. Obviously, we all know stories of like people who have this feeling like, quick, move from under that tree, something's going to happen, or don't go to this, you know, don't go to this place on this day. But most of the time your intuition is coming from this like calm, grounded, centered inner knowing. It's not coming from this place of like, you need to do this, you need to do that, like you need to pay all your bills and you need to like text all these people and you need to do all this work and you're not enough. Like your ego is always going to be trying to make decisions from the not enough place or the fear place. Whereas your intuition's like, do you know, I really think you should book a cruise. And you know, you'll be like, what? That isn't always going to make sense, is basically what I'm saying. Everybody has intuition. Everybody's intuitive. You know, if you're into astrology, you've got like Scorpio, Cancer, and Pisces. These are known as really intuitive signs. I think some people they have more access to their intuition, but I think of intuition like a muscle. And I think it's just something that can be trained. And I personally believe that we all have psychic gifts, that we all have access to the other realms, and it's not like some people have this magical gift and some people don't. I also am a really big believer that trauma cracks you open. You know the famous quote, we spoke about it on the episode with Leo Flowers, of the crack is where the light gets in. I believe that I have a really strong connection to spirit and my intuition because of my trauma. I believe that trauma, pain, bad things in life, they crack reality open and they force you to look at your life from a different way. If you don't have this crack and your reality's fine and everything's happy and everything's working out for you, you don't have an invitation to up-level your reality. There is no need to up-level your reality. So if you do have trauma or pain, or you've been through something in life, that sometimes is like an invitation. You know, so many people, when they get really bad illnesses like cancer, or people go through, you know, near-death experiences, car crashes, breakups, moving country, things like this, these are initiations. These are invitations to do things differently. And sometimes, not only are they a wake-up call to start listening to yourself and to start doing life differently, but they're an access point. They're an access point to connect to that spiritual part of you, the inner knowing. So everyone can be intuitive. Most of the time, people do feel their intuition. They just don't listen to it. You know, right before I broke up with my ex, nearly 6 months ago now, I saw a vision. I saw a vision of me opening his phone. That was my intuition, and I ignored it. I was like, it's an intrusive thought. But it was, dreams. Whenever I've had, on the topic of exes and things like that, whenever I've had a partner and they've got with my friend or, done something like that, I've had a dream. I've literally had a dream where I've seen them kiss the person that they've kissed. I've had a feeling in my stomach, like, your intuition knows. It's like women will always say with like men, they just have a lot of women, not all, they always like know when they're being cheated on. They just know, like it's just a feeling. And that's what I would say. Intuition is a feeling. Intuition is a knowing. Intuition is a sense. It's not this magical gift that's sometimes there and sometimes not. It's always there. It's learning how to listen to it, and it's learning to discern what is intuition, because your ego sometimes will be like, oh yeah, this is your intuition. Yeah. I think you should make this really fear-based decision because you're a worthless piece of shit. You should really do that. You should really do that thing, and then everything will be better. And I don't know, I'm your intuition. So, it's just learning to discern. Ego has a sense of urgency. Ego is always in a state of lack. Ego is always using things outside of itself to affirm its worth. It's always sourcing worth outside of itself. Intuition, I feel, is more peaceful. Your intuition understands itself on another level because it's your highest self. Your ego is more your human part, whereas your intuition is your soul part. It's your soul knowing. Some ways that you can access your intuition: you need tools, you need practices, you need ways to connect. Getting yourself into something called the flow state, which is where you're in flow. When your intuition, as I said, you need sometimes quietness. A lot of people are very intuitive, they just don't listen. They're too busy, they're too tired. So it's about like creating a life where you have pockets in the day to listen. Maybe that's meditation. Maybe that's just closing your eyes and breathing. Maybe that's dancing. Maybe that's swimming. Maybe that's being in nature, putting your hands on the tree and just receiving the messages from spirit. Obviously, I use tarot. I've been using tarot since my very, very early 20s. I think since the age of 20. And I can just look at the card, the image, and when I'm reading tarot for people, I can feel their ancestors, I can feel sometimes spirit guides, I can see their childhood memories. The other day I was doing an event and I saw a guy's dream house. I said, I feel like you have a dream to like build a house. I can see it's like black, it's modern, it's got a big glass window, and I feel like in 5 years you're going to build this house, like buy your own land and build it. And he was like, yeah, that's literally my dream. He was literally like, he was shooketh. Sometimes I can pick up ages, significant ages where things happened to people. I can feel sometimes people's pain in their body where they're storing like trauma. And again, I think this is very much connected to that thing I said to you earlier about how trauma is a gateway to being intuitive. Like, I'm a big believer that I'm a very talented reader. Like, I can read people so well. I can access people's insecurities, thoughts, feelings, because of my experiences when I was a child and a teenager, because I felt so unsafe around people all the time and so in danger and so threatened. I think I'm a really good reader because I was always reading people for my safety. And because of the type of kind of relationship I have with my parents and my trauma, I regulate other people to regulate myself. So, and they say like people with childhood trauma, they always find like the most traumatized person in the room and they're like, okay, you come here, let me regulate you, darling. And then I can feel regulated because my identity is rooted in regulating you. The dark side of being intuitive. It's a gift. My first ever episode of this podcast is all about pain, and pain is your greatest teacher. Pain is a portal. Trauma is a gateway. The crack is where the light gets in. And then it's really cool because you can like live an intuitive based life, which thinking about the society we live in, we have all of these machines that do everything for us. We have Google. Do you remember, like, I don't know how old you are who is watching or listening to this, but I remember when I was a kid and I'd ask my mum or dad a question and they wouldn't have the answer. You would look it up in a thesaurus or a dictionary. Like, you would go into the thesaurus and be like, oh, like... And now we have, like, you know, ChatGPT, which is just insane. Like, everything's done for us, which is great because in some ways the modern advancements of technology are so powerful and so helpful. There are a lot of positive benefits to that. But I think where we are at in the world is we're very disconnected from ourselves. Like, you know, a lot of people, myself included, when we want to regulate, we scroll on social media. When we need to regulate, that's going within, that's connecting deeply to ourselves. If you're going on a little digital device and you're accessing hundreds and thousands of people's worlds all in one moment, that is like the opposite of regulation. Like, that's like just more dysregulation. So yeah, it's kind of going back to what I said earlier with intuition and the flow state. So, you know, what are things that make you feel in flow? Hiking, singing, dancing, what are things, you know, and, you know, when have you had moments in your life where your intuition has come in? As I said, where do you feel intuition in your body? Do you feel intuition when you're listening to music? I get a lot of intuitive hits when I'm moving my body and I'm moving energy, and that's how I get clarity. Sometimes when I'm meditating to just nothing, my brain will start to overthink. So I prefer like doing a shamanic journey or a guided meditation and going and accessing different parts, shadow parts or inner child parts. So it's finding what works for you. So as I said, locate where intuition is in the body, and you can like practice. Like, me and my ex always used to practice this game where we would think of a color and then try and like guess which color you were thinking of, or practicing with numbers. Honestly, it's wild. Like, I love that game. I always won. It was always I was consistently better at that game. I love my intuition so much. It's such a gift to live an intuitive led life, and guarantee, like, you know, I don't always live that way. You know, sometimes I do make decisions from fear and ego. I don't think you can live entirely intuitively because it's like your soul, it's not of this realm, and we do live in reality. You know, sometimes we do need to make logical decisions as well, which, to be honest, I find uncomfortable. I find making the intuitive leap more comfortable than doing the logical thing. But, you know, there's a balance. There's a balance. I say to a lot of people who I read for or clients, get a deck, get an oracle deck, get a tarot deck, and pull a card every day. Such a great way to be connecting to your intuition. Practice on your friends. You know, when you're reading cards with each other, some people they know what's going on with their friends, so they'll read on what they know. And I always say, you know, look at the card. Like, I'm just going to pull up one here. Let's go with the Fool. Oh, I love this one. I feel I'm in the Fool energy at the moment, which is all about leaping into the unknown. I feel like I've been in that for the last 6 months, but I'm in a new level of this. But yeah, it's like looking at this image. I'm sorry for the listeners. I'll describe it to the listeners. It's a guy leaping off a cliff edge into the unknown. He has a umbrella. The sun is beaming in the background, and he has a little dog with him. And I have a really cool story to tell you about the tarot deck in a minute. I'll probably finish the episode with that. So it's looking at this image if you're watching on YouTube, and it's what comes to mind. Like, if you were to look at this image, what comes to mind? Is it, you know, what draws you in? Is it the sun? Is it the dog? Or even if I've described it to you and you're listening, what comes to mind? The Fool is all about leaping into the unknown. How does that make you feel? Is that something you need to do right now? Is that something that you don't need to do? And then it's just listening. It's literally just listening to that spark, that thought, that feeling in your body. You know, I was doing card pulls yesterday with someone and she pulled this like arrow card and there was like a break in the arrow and I felt her body feel an intuitive hit from that break and she got the message that she needed. You know, it's incredible. It's like you could use a painting. You could go into an art gallery and just look at a painting and you could see what you need to see. You could do an intuitive reading on yourself through a painting. Everything is a portal. You can use the whole world as one. You know, messages on a bus, number plates on the back of a car. The whole world is a canvas to access your intuition. And you're seeing things and you're just listening to how your body responds to that. So speaking of intuition and tarot, I was looking at an Instagram post last night about the Rider-Waite Tarot deck, which was designed by Pamela Coleman Smith, absolute icon. And I have a really special connection to this deck and the tarot. And this is just the most wild story. So basically, I grew up in a place called Surrey in the UK. Shout out Surrey if you know it. And when I was 10, I moved to a place called Tenterden in Kent. And I hated this move. It was such a hard time of my life. It was a bit like Inside Out, the film, which I watched, and it really triggered me when I watched it because it was literally my lived experience. So I moved when I was 10. My mum met my stepdad, they got married, we moved house, we moved location, I moved school, they had a baby. It was a lot of change and it was a really hard moment in my life. And for a lot of my teenage years, I was like, I wish I'd never moved to Tenterden. Fuck the cows, you know, because I was like a city girly and then I went all country girl, which I am actually a nature girl. So I thank Tenterden for that, you know, those walks in those green fields really did regulate my nervous system and all of those teenage hormones. So blessings to the cows. Blessings to the cows. Blessings to the grass. Anyway, I always regretted this thing and I've always used to think, what would my life have been like if I'd lived in Surrey? I would have had a better life. Maybe I would be further along. So there is this National Trust home called Small Hythe Place round the corner in Tenterden. And my nan took me there. We had a very special, very spiritual relationship. And she took me there because they had a wall dedicated to one of our ancestors, who was called Sarah Siddons, who was a famous Shakespearean actress in like the 1700s. She performed in Drury Lane. She was one of the most famous actresses of her time. If you don't know me well, I have a background in acting. I went to drama school. I've wanted to be an actor since I was 14. It's like my absolute passion. So I became very fascinated by Sarah Siddons. The fact that there was this famous actor in our ancestry, and my nan took me to this beautiful home, which was owned by another famous actress called Ellen Terry. So Ellen Terry had a wall dedicated to Sarah Siddons because Sarah Siddons was her muse. Sarah Siddons was the essence of a brilliant Shakespearean actress in London in Drury Lane. So that's why there was a wall dedicated to her. Anyway, I bought this tarot deck years later, the Rider-Waite one, which is one of the most famous tarot decks in the world. It's one of like the most popular ones. And it was done by this girl called Pamela Coleman Smith, who actually lived with Ellen Terry, who owned the house in Small Hythe, and was part of her theatre troupe. She did these tarot cards, these famous tarot cards, in the exact place where I moved to in Tenterden. Some of the backgrounds are there, and there was a card, the Queen of Wands. If you're a tarot girly listening to this, has a black cat, and I was looking at this post that was based on like the black cat in the image was Ellen Terry's cat. And I went to Small Hythe Place recently before I moved to the other side of the world. And I remember going there and being like, I've always hated the fact that I wanted to be an actor and I wanted to be a tarot reader because it's not always been the most financially abundant path. It's been a really hard path. Like, I wish I was just an accountant. You know, why do I want to read tarot? Why do I want to be an actor? Like judging that kind of creative part of myself, judging that expressive part, especially because I haven't been conventionally successful. And then I just go to this house and I'm like, my ancestor is here who is, you know, this famous Shakespearean actor, and then there's literally a cushion that's been embroidered by Pamela Coleman Smith, like there. Like the images of my ancestors are here. The multicolored, beautifully embroidered cushion is there. And it's like my two favorite passions entwined in this one house. And I was like moved to Tenterden, which obviously at the time felt like the worst thing ever, but it was actually a blessing. And I just think it's just so crazy that Pamela Coleman Smith, painted the tarot deck there. She did the tarot deck that I started my business with, that I read for hundreds of clients with, that I studied, and it became a business. It became this way I started making money from my craft for the first time. And I just think, how kismet is that? How... When I was in this house and like my nan took me there for the first time and she had the connection to the house, and I'm like, it's just all meant to be, you know, this world is so divine. And my best friend, who is an absolute icon, we went on a walk there like 4 years ago. We went on a walk, like a country walk opposite that house. And we'd been friends from school years ago, and we rekindled our friendship on the kind of grounds of this like spiritual, deep connection to each other. We started a conversation over 4 years ago, and we've never stopped. We literally have never stopped that conversation we started on that walk. We just voice note each other every day, honestly. Some of them are 16 minutes long. We are icons together, but it just shows you how you can be pulled in a place, like how sometimes the worst things in life, you know, when I was 10 years old and I moved to Tenterden, and for years I just hated my life and moving there, and I always thought it was the worst thing ever. It's like, but I met the people I was meant to meet. I went to that place, I was meant to go there. Had I not gone to that school, had the horrible experiences at school I did, then I probably wouldn't have gone to drama school, and then I wouldn't have been given a tarot deck. That's when I was given a tarot deck, and that's when I learned I could be a tarot reader, and that I was psychic and I could do mediumship. And then you just start to realize how divine everything is in life. Like, life is so divine and so magical. Even the shit, even the dark things, even those moments where you're like, why the fuck is this happening to me? And it's like, because it's meant to happen, because it's taking you where you need to go. Like, even those moments in life where you think, why is it me? Like, what is wrong with me? What am I doing wrong? You're not doing anything wrong. You know, it's not happening because something better's happening. It didn't work out because something else was meant to work out. Like, everything is connected. It's like that episode I spoke on of the golden thread, and that there is this beautiful golden thread threaded through every moment, every cell, everything is connected. And that's fucking powerful. So anyway, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I've done so much storytelling, but I hope you've enjoyed my juicy, intuitive stories. And I hope that you're going to listen to your intuition. I hope you've located it in your body. I hope you're going to take some time to listen to her and start making decisions from your intuitive place and not your fear place. Start listening to yourself. Start giving yourself space to listen. Start trusting your intuition. Your intuition is always there. Most of the time, it's just learning to trust it. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, let me know. Share your thoughts and feelings with me. I love, love, love hearing what you have to say. If you're listening, please leave a 5-star review. Please leave a review. Please help grow this beautiful show. Share it with people. If you're watching on YouTube for the first time and you're like, this girl is my vibe, I've got a ton of recorded episodes on Spotify and Apple. So check them out and have a great day and go listen to your intuition.